All right, so we've been talking about percent. And remember, this part's underlined because CENT literally is the Latin root of 100. So think about how many cents are in a dollar. It's 100 cents. How many years are in a century? 100 years. So percent means per 100. So whenever we deal with a percent problem, it's always going to have a denominator of 100. Now, last week we started talking about estimating percents with our benchmark fractions. So remember, if you deal with 50%, that is 1/2 of something. If we deal with 25%, that is 1/4 of something. The last one was 75%, which is 3/4 of something. So if we're dealing with 10% of a number, thinking of our benchmarks, well, we know it's got to be less than 25%, right? So it's got to be less of that number. So go ahead, take this time, pause the video, and using your estimation strategies, which one do you think is 10% of 60? So go ahead, pause the video, try this on your own. All right, so hopefully you pause the video and you're not just flying through it. Let's use some estimation. So when I look at A, we're dealing with 10% of that number right there, 60. Well, I know that 30 is 1/2 of 60, and we know that 1/2 means 50%. So we know it's not A because 30 is literally 1/2 of 60, so 30 is 50%. Way too high for 10%. Next one, let's look at B, 15. Well, think about 15. 15 goes into 60 4 times. So that means 15 is literally 1/4 of 60, and we know that 1/4 means 25%. So again, too high. So we already narrowed it down between C and D. Well, ways to set this up. If you are unsure, set this 6 as the numerator with the denominator of 60. That's how we're going to find the percent of this. So we have 6 out of 60. Now, what percent is that? Well, all we need to do is simplify this number. 6 over 60, if you type it into a calculator, number 6, ABC 60, it would reduce it to 1/10. Or if you can simplify this on your own, think about what number goes into both 6 and 60. It'd be 6, so you divide by 6, you get 1/10. Now remember, percent's always out of 100, so we change this 1/10 to be something out of 100. 10 times 10 is 100, so 1 times 10 is 10. So that means that 6 is 10% of 60. Now just in case, let's find out what 3 out of 60 is. So set it up the same way, we have 3 out of 60, we reduce it. 3 and 60, if you type that in, you simplify it, divide by 3, we get 1 out of 20. And set that to be out of 100, 1/20th. Percent's always out of 100 times 5 times 5. That would give us 5%. So D would be a little too small in this case, but 3 is 5% of 60. So if you got C, that means you are correct for this activator. Moving on, go ahead. You cannot see this. I know the text, the light's going out on the board, so it's kind of dim, but please pause it. Write this down in your notebook. If you can't see it, make sure the video's on full screen. And yeah, pause the video, write it down, and get back to you here in a second. Okay, so whenever we deal with 100% of a number, that is the entire thing. So think about it. If you took 15 free throws and you made all 15, you made 100% of the shots. So you made 15 out of 15. You know that 50%, our benchmark, is half. So if I took 16 free throws and I made 15%, well, half of 16 is 8, so I would have went 8 for 16. And again, 25% is half of 50%. So you take the number, you half it, and then you half it again. So if I took 16 free throws and I made 25%, we know that 25% is 1/4. Well, think about what's 1/4 of 16. I would have made 4. A way to do that with these percents is you take the 16, we just half it twice. So 16, half of that is 8, and then half of 8 is 4. So we know that 4 is 25% of 16. Last but not least, if I took 16 shots and I made 75% of them, we want to add the 25% and then add the 50%, and that gives me 75%. So if I took the 16 shots, 50% was 8, 25% was 4, 8 plus 4 is 12. So that means that 75% of 16 is 12. I would have made 12 out of those 16 free throws. Now, go ahead, copy this chart down. You will need it in the notes. Pause it when you need to, and then fill it in as I go. fill it in as I go, I should say. So starting with the 60 column. What is 100% of 60? Well, if you took 60 free throws, you made all of them, you made 100% of them, that gives us 60. Remember, so 100% is just that number, okay? 50%, we just take half of it. So half of 60, we know is 30. Remember, if I'm moving too fast, pause it as you go, fill it in your chart at your pace. Now, remember, 25%. You could just take 1/4 of it, but the easier way to do it is you take half of the number and then take half of it again. That gives you 25%. So 60, half of that's 30, half of 30 is 15. So that means 25% of 60 is 15. Last but not least, remember with the 75%, we just add the two 50% and 25% together. So 30 plus 15 would be 45. So that means 75% of 60 is 45. Looking at 140. What is all of 140? What's 100% of 140? Obviously 140. To find 50% of that, you take half of it. Half of 140 gives me 70. To find 25% of that, you half the number and then take half again. If you don't know how to do half of it, just divide it by 2. Half of 70 is 35. And last but not least, to find 75%, you add the 50%, add the 25% together. 70 plus 35 gives me 105. Last but not least, let's do it the smallest number up here. 100% of 20 we know is 20. 50%, take half of it. Half of 20 is 10. To find 25%, take half of 20 twice. So half of 20 is 10, half of 10 is 5. And last but not least, we know by now, to find 75%, you add these two together. 10 plus 5 would give us 15. If you don't have all that written down in your notebook, please pause it. Write down as you go before we move on to the next slide. Oh, we're moving on. Okay, on your own. Try these real quick on your own and check your work. Pause the video, check your work before I go over it here in the next couple seconds. Pause, 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 pause. All right, we're moving on. Now, 100% across the board is going to be easy. All of 50, 50. All of 40, 100% of 40 is 40. And all of 500, 100% of 500 is 500. Okay, 50%, we're taking half of it. Half of 50 is 25. 1/2 of 40 is 20. 1/2 of 500 is 250. 1/2 of 500 is 250. Okay, 25%, we take half of it and then take half again. So half of 25 gives me 12.5. In this case, with percents, I would keep it the decimal, 12.5. 1/2 of 20, half of 40 is 20, 1/2 of 20 is 10. 1/2, 1/2, 1/2, 250 gives me 125. Last but not least, remember to find 75%, we add the 50% row and the 25% row together. So 25 plus 12.5. If you don't have a calculator, if you don't know how to do this, look, line up the decimals. 25 is equal to 25.0. So when you add those together, we get something 0.5. That would be 37.5. Next one, easy, 20 plus 10 is 30. So 75% of 40 is 30, which we know that because, look, 30 out of 40 actually reduces to 3/4. So we know that 3/4 is going to give us 75%. Last but not least, what is 75% of 500? Add these two together. We get 5, 7, 3. Add them together, we get 375. Thumbs up. You got that whole column correct on your own. Okay, in the notes, next part. Do these mental math-wise. Pause the video. Some of you had the worksheet. Fill in the worksheet as you go. So, we know how to find 25%. We know how to find 75% now. We've always known how to do 50%. Now, given 10%, 5%, and 1%, all we're going to be doing is move the decimal around. So again, pause the video, take notes as you need, and just know, to find 10% of something, we just move the decimal place one spot to the left. So if the number is, let's do that 37.5 again. To find 10% of it, we just move it over right there and we get 3.75. To find 5%, well, we know 5 is half of 10. So once you move that decimal one spot to the left, and then you take half of that number, that gives you 5%. So you find the 10% and then take half of that. Or last but not least, to find 1%, we would move the decimal place 2 spots to the left. So it's going to look something like this. If we have the number 100, let's find 10%. Well, we know that in every whole number, the decimal is right there at the end. So it's 100.0000. Doesn't really matter how many zeros we get at the end. Remember, trailing zeros don't matter. Let's just call it 100 point whatever. 100 decimals at the end. If we call it $100, bang. There's 2 zeros. To find 10%, again, we move 1 spot. So we take the decimal, move it right there. Now we have 10.0. We know that 10.0 is just 10. So 10% of 100 gives us 10. Now, to find 5% of that, we take half of our 10%. What was our 10%? 10. And half of 10 gives us 5. That was easy. Last but not least, to find 1%, we move the value of the decimal 2 places. So again, our number was 100. Instead of moving it once, we're moving it twice. So it's 1, 2. So now we have 1.00. Doesn't matter how many zeros are at the end. What matters is right here, 1.0, which is just 1. Very important. To find 10%, you move the decimal 1 spot to the left. To find 1%, you move it twice to the left. Move it too fast again. Pause the video. Take these notes down. They are essential for this unit. Let's do these together. Almost done with the lesson. Okay, 10%. Well, we know that we move it 1 spot. Again, where's the decimal right here? At the end. So if we move it 1 spot to the left, it gives us 15.0, aka 15. Okay? To find 5%, we gotta take half of our 10%. Well, our 10% is 15. What's half of 15? Half of 14 is 7. So half of 15 is 7.5. Last but not least, with 1%, we move the decimal twice. So stick at the end. 1, 2. Now we have 1.50, aka 1.5 or 1.5. 10%, you move the decimal once. 1%, you move the decimal twice. On your own, if you have the worksheet, you will find these in section 2 in the middle of the page. If you don't have the worksheet, do this in your notebook. Pause the video, try this real quick on your own, and then I will go over it here in 1 second. Go ahead and pause the video now. All right, starting with our 80 column. Go ahead and put a shade up here. 80 column. Well, we know that 100% of any number is the whole thing. So 100% of 80 is 80. 50% we know is half, so half of 80 gives us 40. To find 25%, remember, we just take half of 50%. So half it again, half of 40, is 20. 10%, here's the mental math ones. The decimal's right here after the 0. We move it 1 spot in between those, we get 8.0, which is aka 8. 5%, we take half of the 10%, that gives us 4. Remember, 1%, we move it 1, 2. So we get 0.80 or just 0.8. 0.80, 0.8, same thing. Next one, 120. All of 120 gives me 120. 50% of that, take half. Half of 120 is 60. To find 25%, again, we got to find half of 50, because 25 is half of 50. Half of 60 gives us 30. 10%, go back to the original number, move the decimal once. It'll give it right there between the 2 and the 0, so 12.0 gives us basically just 12. 5% we know is half of 10%, so half of 12 gives us 6. And let's go back to the original number. 1%, we move it twice, so 1, 2. The decimal lands between the 1 and the 2, so 1.2 would be 1%. Last but not least, filling this in on the worksheet as we go. 100% of 90 gives us obviously 90. 50%, a little tougher. What's half of 90? That would give us 45. 25% of that. What's 25, or what's half of 45? Remember, take half again. Half of 45 would give us 22.5. Remember, 10%, we go back to the original number, move the decimal once. So that would land right between the 9 and the 0. 9.0 is 9. 5% is half of 10%, so half of 9 is 4.5. And last but not least, finding 1%. We got to move that original decimal twice. It's at the end. 1, 2, give us 0.90, aka 0.9. By now you should have had all the notes completed. If you didn't, go back in the slides, put them in your notebook. That's the best place to put them. If you have the guided notes, you're going to be turning that in. But I would go ahead and copy the guide notes in my notebook just in case, so you can have them on your own. And then you can go ahead and complete the worksheet independently and turn it in by the end of class.